We are just a few hours away from kickoff of week number 3 of the 2025 fantasy football season. You might be scrambling to set your lineup for week number 3. In today's video, I'm going to help you do exactly that. We're going to break down my top 40 running back rankings and tiers for week number 3 of the 2025 fantasy football season. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with my must-start running back ones tier with my running backs 1 through 12, Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, Bucky Irving, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, as well as Ashton Genty. Christian McCaffrey this week facing off up against the Arizona Cardinals at home in San Francisco. He was resting on Wednesday, also dealing with a calf injury, but unless that's something we hear more about tomorrow on Friday, I would not worry about that one bit. Christian McCaffrey has been a top 5 running back in PPR in back-to-back weeks. This guy could easily see 10 plus targets in this game. He saw 10 targets in week 1, 7 targets in week number 2. He is one of the safest bets at the running back position week in and week out, and there's no reason to rank him outside of the top 3. At number 2, we got James Cook going up against the Miami Dolphins at home in Buffalo on Thursday Night Football. Now, anytime you can go up against the Miami Dolphins run defense, it's a finger-licking good matchup. James Cook absolutely torched the Dolphins defense last season. I expect him to do the exact same thing this year. 3 total touchdowns through the first 2 games of the season. RB4 in week 1, RB2 in week number 2. I expect another big game out of James Cook. Even though the guy still doesn't get a lot of the snaps, he doesn't play 50+% of the snaps, it doesn't matter. The guy lives in the end zone. At number 3, we got Bijan Robinson going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Back-to-back games inside the top 7 in PPR going up against the Panthers this week that I think is at least at the very minimum a above average matchup. Bijan Robinson is another guy that's just a must start every single week, just like Christian McCaffrey. I understand that you can nitpick every single matchup and try to maybe bump him down from a top 3 running back to like the running back 8, but even in the most difficult matchups, Bijan Robinson is going to show out. So this week up against Carolina, again, the guy's been running incredibly hot and he still hasn't even scored a rushing touchdown. So this is the week where I think he gets that done. Next up, we got Saquon Barkley going up against the LA Rams. Both games up against the Rams last season, later on the season, and then in the playoffs, Saquon Barkley put up belt to ass numbers. I get the LA Rams do have a competent defense, but Saquon Barkley doesn't care about that. Again, he's another one of these guys where every single matchup, doesn't matter if it's against one of the best run defenses in the NFL or one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, you are going to start him. Last week, up against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, that is a tough matchup for a running back. Saquon Barkley finishes, though, still as the running back 13, a touchdown in back-to-back games. Again, when it comes to a lot of these guys inside of the first tier, it's just don't overthink things. You're going to start them regardless. At number 5, we got Devon Achane, Devon 2 Chains of the Miami Dolphins going up against the Buffalo Bills. Devon Achane, running back 10 in week 1, running back 3 last week up against the Patriots. Both games, he did find the end zone. Devon Achane with Tua Tagovailoa. These guys are a connection like peanut butter and jelly. They just gel together. When Tua is healthy, Devon Achane easily has a path to finish as the running back number 1 on the season. This motherfucker had 10 targets last week, 8 receptions, 92 receiving yards. He would have scored even more fantasy points if he didn't step out of bounds and would have got that other touchdown, and the Dolphins probably would have won, and I wouldn't be as sad right now, but it is what it is. Devon Achane must start every single week, and that Bills defense is banged up. The Bills run defense is not very good. So this is a wet dream matchup for Mr. Achane. At number 6, Jonathan Taylor going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. A bit of a doozy in week 1 up against the Dolphins. He gets hurt inside of the 3rd quarter with a neck injury, and they pull him out because the Dolphins were getting shit on by the Colts. They didn't really need to play Jonathan Taylor a ton in week number 2. They fully unloaded him up against the Broncos. 25 carries for 165 yards. 2 targets, 2 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown as the running back number 1. This Indianapolis Colts offense looks legit. Daniel Jones looks incredible. The offensive line is is a brick wall. So Jonathan Taylor is going to be a must start every week. I think the Titans defense is a little bit underrated, but I don't think that's going to be able to stop Jonathan Taylor. At number 7, we got Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. A lot of people try to talk you into the fact that, oh, this is Jared Goff getting out of the dome. Oh, this is Jared Goff on Monday night. Jared Goff is going to struggle mightily in this game after absolutely deep dicking the Chicago Bears defense last week. I'm not worried about that. Even when the offense looked pretty bad up against the Green Bay Packers, Jahmyr Gibbs was still the running back 13, followed it up as the running back number 8. The team is clearly making it known that they want to use Jahmyr Gibbs more. He has seen more snaps this season compared to basically every single game of his career when David Montgomery was healthy. So knowing that they want to utilize Jahmyr Gibbs heavily, knowing that this could be the highest scoring game of the week, you gotta love Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs. At number 8, we got Derrick Henry going up against the Detroit Lions. Now, week 1, Derrick Henry puts up crazy numbers up against the Buffalo Bills, right? They probably should have won that game. That was a blunder, but Derrick Henry is the running back 1. He scores close to 30 PPR points. Then week 2, up against the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns do have a good run defense, but no one was sitting Derrick Henry. Everyone thought, hey, we'd see a whole lot of Derrick Henry in that game, and that wasn't really the case. The passing attack was feasting, except for Mark Andrews, of course, and Derrick Henry was the running back 62. You just wipe that from your memory. Don't worry about it. You just play him every single week. He is guaranteed to bounce back. At number 9, we got Bucky Irving. Now, Bucky Irving is dealing with roughly 7 zillion injuries to his offensive line, so this isn't the best offensive line in the NFL. Far from it, due to all the injuries. Now, maybe the backups are some diamonds in the rough. Okay, so maybe things go well for Irving. Ultimately, though, he sees enough receiving volume, enough dump-offs behind the line of scrimmage that even if the offensive line isn't playing at its best, I still think Bucky Irving should have a good game. And we just saw James Cook absolutely slice and dice his way, Jason Voorhees style, through the Jets defense last week. Back-to-back top 15 finishes out of Bucky. Again, a very safe bet every single week. At number 10, we got Javonte Williams. Now, I, in prior years, have been one of the number 1 Javonte Williams truthers, especially last season. I thought, you know what, another year coming off the ACL, he's going to do good. And then it was just like a triple-headed running back by committee in Denver with Sean Payton. I said, you know what, I'm not going to do it again. I think Javonte Williams is washed. It's Jaden Bonnie Blue season. And boy, was I wrong, because it's Javonte Williams season. Back-to-back games with 20-plus PPR points, 3 total touchdowns through the first 2 games, both games inside the top 5. This is a matchup that could be one of the highest scoring games of the week. Javonte Williams lives inside the end zone. And while I think eventually Javonte Williams, maybe the wheels fall off, the wheels on the bus stop going round and round, but with how many great matchups he has before the bye week, I don't think he's going to slow down just yet. I like him a ton up against the Bears. At number 11, we got Travis Etienne, another guy that I was completely out on in the summer, and it just goes to show that sometimes you're wrong, right? I thought Tank Bigsby was better than Etienne, and then without even really giving him much of a chance, Etienne has a big week 1, then they ship off Bigsby to Philadelphia. So now it's Etienne and Baishal Tutin, even with Trevor Lawrence looking like a steaming pile of dog shit. Even when Trevor Lawrence is playing terribly, Travis Etienne is still able to have big games. He's involved in the receiving game, gets a decent amount of touches, game in and game out. Both games inside the top 14. Not a great matchup for a running back here, but again, on sheer volume alone with the dump-off upside here, I think Etienne probably finishes inside the top 12. To close out the top 12, we've got Ashton Jeanty. Now, a lot of people are starting to panic heavily on Ashton Jeanty. Now, if we were to put the panic meter all the way over here is really bad. Right here is, I'm not really that worried. I'm not in the middle. I'm a little bit more towards the not worried side of things. Do I think that what I've seen through the first 2 weeks was great? Fuck no, baby. But they don't really have a running back too. They did use Zamir White a little bit too much last week, and hopefully the coaching staff as a whole just realizes, why are we using Zamir White in these scenarios when we drafted Ashton Jeanty inside of the first fucking round? The guy that was averaging 185 yards per game at Boise. I think they'll figure that out. I think Pete Carroll, you know, that man loves to chew bubblegum and run the fucking football up against the Commanders in Washington. This is a great matchup for Ashton Jeanty. So while you might still be panicking, and sure, I'm definitely more nervous than I was entering into the season, he's taken his rookie lumps. He's taken his rookie strides, and entering into week number 3, I think this is his best game yet. And I still think he has league winner written all over him. Moving into the second tier at the running back position, the high-end RB2s with James Conner, Chase Brown, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs, as well as Jordan. The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Now, James Conner definitely did disappoint last week up against the Carolina Panthers. The Arizona Cardinals put them in a full Nelson, and they didn't really have to do much in that game offensively. We ended up seeing Trey Benson have a decent day as well, and maybe some of those worries about Trey Benson potentially taking over might have entered into your mind, but as of right now, I still do believe this is James Conner's backfield. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. I think brighter days are ahead for him, and this 49ers defense really isn't all as great as I thought they would end up being going into the season. So again, James Conner's kind of unreliable. He might not be a running back 1 every single week, but you feel pretty good about him as a running back 2. At number 14, we got Chase Brown going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. I want to rank Chase Brown higher, but I'm a little bit nervous about Jake Browning and the production that he brings to this offense. And we did see, even with Joe Burrow, Chase Brown has yet to have a top 20 finish. He hasn't been so bad that it's laughable, but he hasn't been good enough to where you're like, wow, I'm so happy I drafted this motherfucker in the late second or the early third round. I don't mind this spot up against the Vikings defense. I do think Chase Brown will see a decent amount of receiving looks in this game as well. But ultimately, you're definitely not as excited anymore about Chase Brown, who, even though through the woes of week 1, going into week 2, I still had him as a top 12 running back. Right now, I definitely had to drop him down. At number 15, we got Alvin Kamara going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Alvin Kamara, kind of just like James Cook and Unk, that is just pretty reliable as a running back too, that in any given game might get 10 fucking targets randomly. I guess James Conner won't really do that, but Alvin Kamara can, and become a top 5 running back. He's going to be all reliable for you. 14 plus points in back-to-back games. Again, I get that he might not have that same burst that he used to have. I understand that he's on an offense that isn't very good with Spencer Rattler, but he got 6 targets last week. He is a very safe bet every single week. At number 16, we got Josh Jacobs. Now, I do have Josh Jacobs ranked lower than consensus. Expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros have him as the RB10. I got him at RB16. Limited in practice with an ankle injury on Wednesday. Not really something I'm worrying too much about, though. What I am worried about is this matchup up against the Cleveland Browns defense. The Cleveland Browns defense shut down Derrick Henry, and they look very good in week number 1 as well. So I think you got to pump the brakes a little bit with Josh Jacobs. Now, this is another guy that just lives in the end zone, right? This is a team that wants to heavily run the rock inside of the red zone. They believe Josh Jacobs is efficient inside the red zone, which he is, and thus they give him a lot of opportunities. He's only seen 1 target through the start of the season, which sucks donkey cock if you're in a full PPR or half PPR league, but I do think the targets will be coming more his way. He's just, not the kind of guy that would have at the end of the season 10 targets or something ridiculous like that. So going up against the Browns, I just want to pump the brakes a little bit. I think he's going to be fine as an RB2, but I think if you're expecting him to go balls to the wall as like a top 5, top 10 option, I think that's a little bit crazy, in my opinion. At number 17, we got Jordan. The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Going up against the Cincinnati Bengals at home in Minnesota. Cam Akers is the running back 2 in this backfield because Aaron Jones ends up getting hurt, put on the IR. So it's Jordan Mason's time to shine, at least for the near future. Matchup up against the Bengals is a wet dream for Jordan Mason, though. The fact that Carson Wentz is under center instead of JJ McCarthy definitely does kick the offense in the gonads. Maybe Carson Wentz is able to dial the clock back and look like he did back in the day on the Philadelphia Eagles. And honestly, JJ McCarthy hasn't looked that great, so maybe it's not a severe downgrade. But last time we saw Carson Wentz, he didn't really look all that good either. Again, the matchup's great. The volume's going to be great because the Vikings just want to spam run the ball. And now that Cam Akers is the RB2, you know that Jordan Mason's going to be getting a majority of the touches in this backfield, which wasn't the case when they kind of wanted to do a 1A, 1B scenario with Jordan Mason as well as Aaron Jones. Moving now on into the third tier here, the mid-range running back 2s, headlined by Kenneth Walker, followed by Chuba Hubbard. Then we end up seeing Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, as well as Jaylen Warren. Now, Kenneth Walker played incredibly last week, right? And I liked what I saw out of Kenneth Walker as the RB9, but it is important to understand that they still very much want to use Zach Charbonnet, and that could really end up being the dagger in the back of Kenneth Walker, potentially having a top 5 season. We know he has the ability to do so. We know the Clint Kubiak offense is centered around a scheme that works very well for Kenneth Walker, but if they're going to use Zach Charbonnet as heavily as they have been, I do think there are some question marks about his floor game in and week out. Like week 1, he was the running back 39, scoring 5 fantasy points. Last week, he gets 3 more carries, 2 less targets, running back 9, 19 fantasy points, finds the end zone. Again, I love this matchup up against the Saints. I think Kenneth Walker is going to be a great running back for fantasy, but I think the floor is incredibly low, if I'm being honest, and that's why I don't have it ranked much higher. Before we move on into the next running backs in this tier, as well as the rest of the running backs in my rankings, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you will receive $50 in bonus funds. How the pick'em works is incredibly simple. You pick at least 2 players, they're higher or they're lower. If both the picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. Make sure you guys do check that out, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Again, I like Kenneth Walker. I love the matchup. There are just too many question marks on the amount of touches that he gets weekly to rank him higher than this. Next up, we got Chuba Hubbard going up against the Atlanta Falcons at home in Carolina. Now, the Carolina Panthers offense in week 2 to start off the game, absolutely terrible dog shit play. Bryce Young fumbles right at the beginning of the game, and it goes for 6. It's bad. They're down bad. They figure things out towards the end of the game. Chuba Hubbard scores back-to-back weeks where the Carolina Panthers offense looks pretty bad, and Chuba Hubbard finds the end zone. So while I don't love this spot up against the Atlanta Falcons, Chuba Hubbard keeps scoring, and when players are running as hot as Chuba Hubbard back-to-back weeks inside the top 10, I don't think you can fade away from that. At number 20, we got Breece Hall going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. We saw old man 9-inch Nicholas Chubb score against this defense, so it's definitely possible that Breece Hall could find the end zone in this game. Tyrod Taylor as the lead signal caller here definitely does worry me at least a bit. I don't think Tyrod Taylor is completely terrible, but I also don't think Tyrod Taylor is as good as Justin Fields, so this does definitely bump the offense down, and this isn't the most ideal matchup ever. Breece Hall should be able to see enough targets to keep his head above water, and I don't necessarily think this will be as much of a beatdown as it was last week where the Jets just couldn't move the ball at all, but I do think better games are ahead for Breece Hall, especially next week up against my Dolphins defense in Miami. I think that game's on Monday Night Football. Breece Hall will probably be like the running back 1 by the end of the week. Next up, we move to Kyren Williams of the LA Rams going up against the Eagles in Philadelphia. This is not a great matchup for running backs. Kyren Williams did lose his touchdown last week to Blake Corum, which is about as big of a disaster as it could get for Kyren Williams, because Kyren Williams has always been so good in fantasy, not because he's a great elite running back in the NFL, but because he sees so much volume. He still had 17 rushes, though, for 66 yards, just didn't get the touchdown like he did in week number 1. I think he should find the end zone this week, but again, I will temper my expectations a little bit if Blake Corum starts to get more action. Next up, final guy in this tier is going to be Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the New England Patriots in New England. We saw the Dolphins rushing attack work pretty well last week up against the Patriots. Jaylen Warren was a guy that I was completely out on this summer because Jaylen Warren has had many opportunities to be the guy in Pittsburgh, and he just never really lived up to those expectations. Even when Najee Harris was running like he was stuck in molasses, Jaylen Warren was not able to pry that job away from him, and when he got the opportunities to be the guy, he ended up flopping like a fish out of water. Now, going up against the Patriots with back-to-back top 20 finishes, and he has looked very solid, and with Caleb Johnson basically banished to the doghouse, and with Kenneth Gainwell being the pseudo RB1, RB2, I think Jaylen Warren is in this range where you do feel comfortable starting him going forward. Again, I think eventually maybe Caleb Johnson will be able to carve out enough of a role where none of these guys are startable, but as of right now, you got to just look at the trends, look at what's happening, look at the matchup, and you feel pretty good about Jaylen Warren. Now we move into the high End RB3 range with Omarion Hampton, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, as well as DeAndre Swift. Now, Omarion Hampton on that panic meter, right? We talked about Genty, right? On a 1 to 10 scale, Genty's at like a 2 or a 3. Hampton more at like a 5 in my opinion, because I am still a little bit more worried about Najee Harris potentially taking away more work, but I still think you don't draft Omarion Hampton in the first fucking round for him to be the towel boy for Najee Harris, and he has been the lead back on this team. Tough matchups, though, through the first 2 weeks of the season. The Chiefs' run defense, excellent, beautiful, amazing, one of the best in the NFL. The Raiders, pretty good as well. This week he gets the Broncos. Not a 5-star matchup by any means, but I do think this will be a decent enough matchup for him. The Chargers offense is the exact opposite of what I thought they would be going into the year. I talked all summer about why I love Omarion Hampton. That is because this Chargers offense is one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL at heart. If they had a competent running back like Omarion Hampton, they would run the ever-living shit out of the ball game in and game out. Fast forward, we start off the season, and they're throwing the ball at a super high clip. Will they do this all year? Probably, because it keeps working. So I'm a little bit more nervous about Omarion Hampton. It's not over. This is not over. Shout out to Conor McGregor for Omarion Hampton. It's not finito, but I am definitely much more panicked than I was last week. Next up, we got TP, Tony Pollard, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Tony Pollard, he's getting all the opportunity. Julius Chestnuts just barely touches the field. 18 touches in week number 1, 19 actually, 20 in week number 2, 8 fantasy points, 9 fantasy points. I still think he's going to see a big load this week. Pause. The Colts matchup isn't the best. It isn't the worst. Let's see what happens. Ultimately, though, I can't rank him higher than this because he hasn't really done much yet. Next up, we move to David Montgomery. Now, David Montgomery is worse than last season because of the fact that the offense is now giving more touches to Jahmyr Gibbs. Going up against the Baltimore Ravens is a fine matchup for David Montgomery, so I think he could have a good game. But again, you can't rank him much higher than this because we're seeing so many more looks for Jahmyr Gibbs. If Montgomery finds a touchdown, you're pretty happy. If he doesn't find the end zone, he's probably in this limbo range of running back 25 to 32. That's why I've got him as the RB25. At number 26, we got J.K. Dobbins. Now, in a different matchup, I would be talking much more about J.K. Dobbins next week up against the Bengals, where he might be potentially playing with J.K. Dobbins' balls, metaphorically, of course, like they're a fushigi, okay? The matchup up against the Cincinnati Bengals is amazing. It's the type of matchup that you dream about. Facing up against the Chargers is the type of matchup that you see in your nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a revenge game for J.K. Dobbins here. Running back 14 in week 1, 16 in week number 2, but I will temper my expectations here because the matchup is tough, but they do clearly want to give the ball more to him than RJ Harvey. Next guy and final guy in this tier is going to be DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Currently questionable, limited with the quad injury again on Thursday. Matchup up against Dallas, we just saw I'm a scat man, Cam Scatterbo run pretty well against them last week. DeAndre Swift is what he always will be, and I'm going to say this every single week. DeAndre Swift will never win you your league. He might be good enough for you to, maybe he's the edge, maybe he drops a 20 bomb, he wins you your week, right? But he's not going to win you your league because he's not going to be able to do that consistency. He's going to get 10 to 15 points, and you're going to be fine with it, though it does seem like they want to use Kyle Monagai more in the backfield, so that could end up being kind of the end of DeAndre Swift coming up pretty soon. Next tier here would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th tier with 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, and no one circles the wagons like Bill Nye, the science guy, JCM, my mid-range RB3s. 9-inch Nicholas Chubb found the end zone last week, and it was beautiful. As a Nick Chubb stan for years dating back to Cleveland, it was beautiful to see him find the end zone. It was beautiful to see him and Baker share a nice hug after the game. My main men from the Cleveland Browns. Now, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb looked okay last week. He looked like he has more burst than people say he does, but he doesn't look like the old Nicholas Chubb, but I don't think he has to look like the old version of himself up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The biggest issue with Chubb is the offensive line is dog shit. There's going to be a lot of runs where it's over before it even started. Before he even gets a chance to hit the hole has been eviscerated, and there are multiple men around him already bringing him down. I like the spot up against the Jaguars, but again, I can't rank him much higher than this because the offensive line and the offense as a whole just isn't all that great. Final guy in this tier is going to be JCM, running back 17 in week 1. Last week, the matchup up against the Packers was tough, so I didn't rank him super high, but I said, you know what, you can start him. And the Green Bay Packers did not allow JCM to go crazy, but he only saw 4 rushes. Now, Austin Eckler is out for the season with the Achilles. Terrible for Eckler. I love Eckler, one of my favorite players in the NFL, so I hope that he ends up okay. He's able to play again, but he was contemplating retirement before the injury, so that might be over for Eckler, but best of luck to Eckler, one of my favorite players, has been since he was on the Chargers with him and Melvin Gordon. Now, the Raiders matchup here is not the best, but JCM should become the lead back. I am hesitant to rank him higher, though, because this could just end up being a 3-headed backfield dragon of death for fantasy, where, sure, you could play JCM because he gets the most touches, but it might be a straight-up snap split. He might not get any targets, and it might just end up being very bad at the end of the day. Next tier here is going to be the low-end running back 3s with Ramondre Stevenson, Bishal Tootin, Quinshon Judkins, Isaiah Pacheco, and Cam Skattebo. Now, for this tier, where we begin with Ramondre Stevenson put up belt-to-ass numbers against the Dolphins. He individually bent the Dolphins over a table, 11 for 54, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 88 receiving yards. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense isn't what we made them out to be in the summer. They are far from ideal. They are overpaid and bad, so maybe Ramondre has a good game again. I thought they were going to give more touches to Henderson because during the week, they're like, oh, we're going to kind of switch up how we do things. And the switch up was, fuck you, Travion Henderson. We're going to give the ball more to Gibson and more to Ramondre. So this is tough sledding. We don't know exactly how the backfield is going to play out. At the end of the day, I just don't think Ramondre Stevenson is really all that good. And I think a lot of people are going to sip the Kool-Aid of what we saw last week, fire him up, expecting to see what we saw last week, and then we probably just will never see that again. Bishal Tootin looked great last week up against the Bengals as the RB17 found the end zone, but this is still very much ETN's backfield. If you have to play him, you're just hoping for the touchdown. Quinshon Judkins going up against the Packers. We kind of talked about this already. The Packers defense is elite. The Packers defense's matchup is terrible for a running back. Judkins was the lead back, though, in his first game back. I don't understand how the fuck he's playing when they said they were going to suspend him. But, you know, that's just how the NFL does things. Maybe they'll suspend him next year, even though they talked about doing it this year. Who fucking knows? The matchup is terrible. But again, you're just hoping he maybe gets a couple dump-offs and maybe just falls ass backwards into the end zone when the game's already over and the Packers defense just gives up. At number 33, we got Isaiah Pacheco. I love Pacheco. More touches last week than week 1. So we're starting to make progress. And I think Isaiah Pacheco will be much more start-worthy soon. This is the matchup where he could kind of jump out. This could be his coming out party here for this season. But again, they use Kareem Hunt too much. It's just, you know, it just seems like a stay away at this point. Kind of watch it happen. Watch what happens from your bench. And then maybe we could play him next week up against the Ravens, especially with the Chiefs offense not looking the best. Next up is Cam Skattebo going up against the Chiefs. Terrible matchup for him. So even if you liked what you saw last week up against the Cowboys, he found the end zone, 11 carries for 45 yards. I like what I saw. I think, you know, between him and Tracy, it's going to be a little confusing, but Cam Skattebo did look good. But this just reeks of, hey, you had that great game. Now a lot of people they're going to just be like, oh, he played great last week. Let me throw him into my lineup just to get face fucked by the fact that he's going up against the Chiefs defense. Final tier here is going to be the YOLO tier with Travion Henderson, Zach Charbonnet, Tyrone Tracy, Trey Benson, and RJ Harvey. You are just hoping, like, I know the low end running back 3 tier, it feels a little bit scary. You need a touchdown. Here, you are just praying that they get on the field more and maybe do something. Like, again, this is just real tough the deeper you get down in here. Travion Henderson was a guy I loved down the stretch of the summer. Early on in the summer, I told you guys, hey, maybe don't draft him. They're going to use Ramondre a lot. We all know Josh McDaniels is a fucking idiot. But then all of this positive drumbeat kept coming out about Travion Henderson. Look how great he is in pass protection. Look how great he is at this and that. And you watch him run a route, and he looks like Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm like, you know what? It's Travion Henderson time, baby. I'm joining the bandwagon. I'm hopping onto the bandwagon, even though I was off for months. And now I'm getting fucking front hand, backhand, Stockton slapped by Nate Diaz. It's so bad. So bad. 5 touches last week after 11 touches in week 1. He struggled in pass protection, had multiple penalties last week. I fear he may be trapped in the doghouse. Next guy, Zach Charbonnet. He'll see his touches, but again, Kenneth Walker looked way better than him. 15 rushes for 10 yards. Maybe they retract his touches. He looked good in week 1, though. Just seems like a scenario I don't really want to be invested in. Tyrone Tracy next. He looked better in week 1 than Scatterboo. Week 2, Scatterboo looks better. Tough matchup. You just don't want to be doing it. Again, none of these guys you want in your lineup in the YOLO tier. The low-end RB3 tier, I don't even want those guys in my lineup really either. Then we got Trey Benson. Trey Benson is kind of the clear 2 behind James Conner. Back-to-back games with 8+ points. But, James Conner is still going to be the guy getting the touchdowns. Final guy, RJ Harvey. We saw his touches decrease in week number 2, but only by 1. They still want to give the ball more to Dobbins. If he breaks free, he's soaring, he's flying, Zac Efron style. He could score a touchdown, but this is a really tough matchup for him to do so. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below like I owe you some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If y'all follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy and check out Underdog promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. We'll be live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Thursday night, so make sure if you're watching this video, you head on over there afterward. Love you long time. Hope you have a great one. As always, good boy.